We are ready to start going live.
Thank you, Simon. We'll call our meeting to order at 10:01. I'm pleased to offer the land acknowledgement today, particularly because it's National Indigenous Peoples Day, and we had a flag raising earlier this morning. Thank you, Councillor Saint-Amand. And also, we have a market in the at City Hall. It'll be there until 3, so I do wish to mention that. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. I do just wish to note that this meeting, the invitation for this meeting was extended to all members of Regional Council. We're pleased to welcome Councillors Mancini and White to the table today. So I'll call for the approval of the May 21-26 minutes. Thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Looking for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Saint-Amand. Are there any errors or omissions? And Clerk, I think you were going to mention something.
Thank you, Chair. I can just speak to a quick administrative correction there. The previously circulated draft minutes just failed to note that the during the deferral for item 17.1, the motion had been put on the floor before it was deferred. The minutes have been corrected to reflect that.
Thank you. So could I have a call for the question? Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Contrary minded, nay. The motion has carried. With respect to the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions, for efficiency, we have proposed that items 13.1.1, development of the next economic strategy, and item 8.2, affordable housing strategy project update, be considered prior to item 7. If this is acceptable, I'm asking for a motion to approve the order of business as amended. Thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Thank you, Councillor Saint-Amand. All those in favor, could I have a call for the question? Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Contrary minded, nay. The motion has passed. We don't have any business arising out of the minutes. Now looking for a declaration of conflict of interest. Do any committee members have a conflict of interest related to an item on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, I will move along. Item number 6 is motions of reconsideration, and there are none. And so we'll now move to item 13.1, which is our update on the economic strategy. So I will ask that our presenters come forward. And I'm just turning my page. I know that we're fortunate to have Wendy Luther, CEO, and Ian Munro, Chief Economist, or some other title similar to that, presenting an update on the economic strategy this morning. So, and I understand Jake Whalen is here as well. So thank you for being here, Jake. And when you're ready, Wendy, I will turn it over to you and Ian.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. I'm Wendy Luther, President and CEO of Halifax Partnership, Halifax's public-private economic development organization, and I'm joined by our Chief Economist, Ian Munro. A special acknowledgement of Councillor Cathy Daigle-Gammon, who sits on the Halifax Partnership Board of Directors. Thank you for this opportunity to provide an update on the progress against deliverables for people, planet, prosperity, Halifax's inclusive economic strategy for 2022 to 2027, and present our proposed approach for developing Halifax's next economic strategy. As you know, Halifax Partnership and HRM co-lead People Planet Prosperity. The report in your package highlights strategy implementation to March 31st, 2026. I'd like to acknowledge that in addition to HRM, Halifax Partnership is funded and supported by the Province of Nova Scotia, the Government of Canada, and 100 private sector and post-secondary investors. We couldn't do our work to strengthen Halifax's economy without this collaboration. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Wendy. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, there we go. I'll be very brief here. I already briefed you on some of these figures back in February. We have 4 top-level goals. Our GDP goal, I'm pleased to report that we reached that ahead of time. The 2027 goal of $26.3 billion we've already reached. The population and labor force goals for 2027, to get to them, we'll need a slight increase over the growth levels we saw last year, but what is required is well within the range of what we've seen in recent history. The well-being metric did slightly worsen this year, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. One other thing I'll highlight here, I didn't have this information in February, is our results of our business confidence survey done by Narrative Research. And as you can see, we had a nice bounce back in that business confidence level after 3 years of decline. And the other metric is our well-being metric. As you'll recall, the precise target is to reduce the share of people who in a survey report a low level of life satisfaction. That would be in the blue section you see at the bottom. That did increase slightly from the year before. With that, I'll turn it back to Wendy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. So Halifax Partnership and HRM are working closely to address the challenges and opportunities of our growing city. Today, I'll provide a few examples of our impact for the 2025-2026 year, starting with the Promote and Maximize Inclusive and Sustainable Growth goal. Halifax remains a highly sought-after location for business investment and growth. Through a collaborative Team Nova Scotia approach, we supported 5 companies in locating or growing in HRM, resulting in 238 expected jobs. One of these companies is UK-headquartered Marble Aerospace, a maritime monitoring company that uses fleets of high-speed drones to provide real-time intelligence to government agencies and businesses. Our business development team supported Marble Aerospace's decision to choose Halifax over competing jurisdictions. The company established operations in rural HRM in February 2026 and is projected to create 20 jobs by year-end. The Partnership Smart Business team supported the growth of 591 local businesses last fiscal year, including 95 rural-based businesses. And throughout last fiscal, the Partnership led the extremely well-received Productivity Puzzle Initiative, a series of discussions and research designed to highlight and spark a broader conversation around the significance of productivity, why it matters for Nova Scotians, and how improving it strengthens our economy and improves our lives. Building on the past year's work and insights, we are exploring the evolution of the productivity puzzle alongside the renewal of the economic strategy. Attract, retain, and develop talent. Now, Halifax Partnership plays a key role in helping local employers attract, retain, and develop talent and build a strong and sustainable workforce that supports business success and economic growth now and in the future. Last fiscal, the Partnership welcomed over 110 new connectors and 320 newcomer and young professional connectees to the Halifax Connector program. 205 connectees found career jobs with employers in HRM. And now, on to Halifax's next economic strategy. Since 2005, Halifax Partnership has co-created and implemented economic strategies with HRM designed to direct and accelerate Halifax's economic development and growth. As we move into the next economic strategy development, we are planning for the opportunities on the horizon and reflecting on the ways we can collectively ensure Halifax is ready to receive, harness, and capitalize on those opportunities. Now, as Halifax's public-private economic development organization, Halifax Partnership, in collaboration with HRM, must be laser-focused on growing the economy to improve residents' well-being and prosperity. Our proposal for the next strategy highlights this focus. And back to you, Ian.
Thank you again. So our next strategy, like the ones before, really will focus on improving the well-being of the municipality's residents. And in economic development terms, this means growing Halifax's GDP per capita. This growth will come from expanding our labor force, enhancing its skill base, and from improving productivity through business investment and sound policy from governments. A lot has changed since, a lot has happened since our last strategy was developed in 2022, and we're taking these changes into account in the next strategy. As Wendy alluded to earlier, productivity improvement is central to this, and that will form an important piece of the next strategy, and we'll have a little bit more on that in a moment. We're hopeful that the Productivity Puzzle initiative last year did help raise some understanding and awareness on this topic. And finally, I think we're all hearing and understanding that there may be some really major opportunities ahead of us in terms of defense spending, new resource development. And so a key question will be, how do we become ready to capitalize on them? And that also be a core component of the next strategy. Back to you, Wendy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. As mentioned previously, we recognize the need to grow our economy and specifically our municipal tax base for everyone's benefit. Moving forward, we recognize that our efforts are best focused together with HRM's strategic planning process. Therefore, we recommend that this interim economic strategy will be a bridge to the next Halifax strategic plan post-2030 and in line to provincial and federal priorities where appropriate. For this proposed economic strategy from 2027 to 2030, we will gather input from key partners in HRM and leverage the expertise of HRM's Office of Diversity and Inclusion and ANSIO. There are significant challenges in front of us, but also substantial opportunities. Halifax's next economic strategy will confront both, making the city ready to attract and embrace investment, helping businesses be ready to compete on the world stage, and ensuring our workforce can thrive in the economy of the future. As we build out the next strategy, here are the key themes we'd like to explore within these economic drivers that will enable prosperity and ensure that the entire Halifax region is ready to unlock new opportunities as they arise. First is investment and growth, making it easier to do business in Halifax, capitalizing on strategic opportunities for inclusive, sustainable growth by supporting existing businesses while creating a nurturing environment to attract new companies. Productivity improvements. So as we've already heard, productivity is a key long-term driver of higher living standards. And finally, labor and skills. Attract, retain, and develop talent to ensure Halifax has a skilled, diverse, and inclusive workforce aligned to industry needs to grow the economy now and in the future. The economic strategy development includes the following key components. Build on previous strategy momentum and leverage insights from the Productivity Puzzle series. Ensure strong economic fundamentals and economic resilience is at the core of this work. And leverage existing assets and ensure alignment between HRM, Halifax Partnership, federal and provincial strategies, programs, and resources. We will be gathering insights from a variety of sources to ensure the new economic strategy builds on existing plans and research. Halifax Partnership and HRM staff will build the strategy with strategic insight from Halifax Partnership Board's Development Committee. The strategy will be approved by the Halifax Partnership Board, CPED, and finally Regional Council. And once approved, we would aim to launch the plan in spring of 2027 and will continue to collaborate with all partners as we bring the strategy's actions to life. As noted in the staff report, there are multiple levels of accountability throughout the process. HRM staff is also actively engaged on the staff working group and will draw on subject matter experts within the whole of HRM to support the development of the plan. We will be updating CPED and the Halifax Partnership Board throughout the process with the goal of seeking Regional Council approval in March 2027. And now, based on the approach presented today that was approved by the Halifax Partnership Board of Directors, thank you for considering the following motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy and Ian. And I'll turn it over. I'll turn it over to Councillor Daigle-Gammon to put the motion on the floor, and then we'll open for questions and comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Recommend that the Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council, 1, direct the Chief Administrative Officer to develop a 3-year economic strategy, 2027 to 2030, in collaboration with the Halifax Partnership in accordance with the approach set out in this report, and return to the Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee with a proposed strategy, and receive attachment 1, Halifax Partnership Economic Strategy Implementation Update 2022-2027 as an update on Halifax Partnership actions under People, Planet, Prosperity, Halifax's Inclusive Economic Strategy 2022-27 in accordance with the HRM Halifax Partnership Services Agreements.
Thank you, Councillor Daigle Gammon, for putting the motion on the floor, and Councillor Kent for seconding. Councillor Daigle Gammon, did you wish to speak to it?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's really a privilege to sit on the board of the Halifax Partnership. The work that's done, the investment from community and business and the investors, along with what's happening within the orders of government, I think is pretty impressive. Just the other day, the Halifax Partnership celebrated 30 years, and congratulations. And what a wonderful celebration in a room full of community leaders and government partners from all orders of government. So I think the work that the partnership has done has significantly changed the fabric of HRM. And I think that these next 5 years, from 2027 to 2033 years rather, we're going to see another significant change. And it's pretty exciting to be part of it. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Mancini. Typically, we, yes, but I know you must leave. You told me. So I was going to say typically we go to the committee members first, but I know Councillor Mancini is filling in at an event later this morning, so I do want to give him the opportunity, if that's okay with Councillor Kent. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of my favorite colleagues in the chair. Amazing. Thank you so much. Ian, Wendy, thank you very much. Thank you for the work the partnership does. I have lots of questions, so I'll try to pare them down to a handful here. We talked about the population goals. We've been talking about it. The Premier talks about it from our province. Yet there are major changes federally to immigration. Here, being a university town, I know that's dear to your heart, Wendy. International student numbers have been reduced. Where are we with those possible, that goal of 650,000 people as a population, when those two factors play a huge obstacle in achieving those goals?
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Mancini. This is my favorite topic, Councillor Mancini. So a few reflections. Our population growth in Halifax has slowed. It has not gone negative, unlike Canada as a whole. And Nova Scotia at one point in the past year did go negative population growth, as in more people leaving than coming and being born. It is widely understood that in order to grow your economy, you have to also grow your population. And what's top of mind for us is around the labor force, the workforce required to be able to stand up these incredible investments, particularly in defense, but not only in defense. What's most concerning to me and many business leaders right now is, in fact, the situation with individuals who are here in our communities on work permits with their permanent residency in process, and their work permits are expiring and they're being sent back home. This is incredibly concerning because these individuals are gainfully employed. They've been trained by their employers over a period of time. They live here in our community, they contribute to our community, and suddenly their pathway has been cut off. So almost every conversation I have with business leaders, including ourselves at Halifax Partnership, have team members who are in this purgatory type situation, we must overcome this and other population growth related barriers if we are going to develop the workforce required for these defense and other investments to be successful.
Sorry, Wendy, my time's going to run out here. So is there any intel then with the federal government on those two pieces when it comes to immigration and international students? Especially now with the defense contracts that are coming forward and the excitement of that. But if we don't have people to do the work, where are we?
So a number of efforts from ourselves. Not long ago, I presented to the House of Commons Standing Committee on Immigration to make the case that Atlantic Canada has different needs than other parts of the country, clearly. And one of the major reasons that Atlantic Canada's economic growth has lagged over the past many, many decades is because our population growth has been largely stagnant until recently. So these policy changes federally have actually impacted us disproportionately and faster than other parts of the country. I believe the strongest voice in this with the federal government will be the private sector, employers of across a number of sectors, but in manufacturing, in IT, in defense, in oceans, in scientific pursuits that cannot grow if we don't get this labor and immigration piece correct.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think, the private sector does have that voice of influence more so than even other orders of government here. My last question then, if I may, while I have time, on the labor force, in your labor and skills themes, you talked about improving the labor force. We have the threat of some of our younger residents leaving because of the cost of living, rent, and the ability to buy homes and so on. So that threat. So, is there a strategy to address that? Some of that falls upon our shoulders, other orders of government, but that is a real threat. And for the first time in a long time, we used to praise about our young people coming back and staying after graduating. Now we're starting to hear they're leaving because of the cost of living.
Thank you. So at Halifax Partnership, our first lever in addressing that is creating more high-valued employment. Right. So when we're attracting global companies here and helping our local companies expand, and they are providing growing, very competitive wages for the workforce, that addresses some of the affordability issues by our residents' ability to earn enough to afford an increasingly expensive cost of living. Where we lean in so closely with HRM is your incredible levers to help reduce bureaucracy and red tape around getting business done, getting housing built, which ultimately, if time is money. So if these investments take additional time, like inordinate amounts of time to come online, those costs are in the end passed on to renters, to home purchasers, or if we're talking in the business sphere, to those individuals running the business. So it's about growing those top line revenues for these individuals in the form of their personal wages, and finding ways to create efficiencies in the system for business and for residents.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini, Councillor Kent, and thank you for your patience.
That's quite all right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you both for coming in today. Wendy, it's always a pleasure to see you as well and your team. I want to acknowledge and congratulate you on the 30 years. I couldn't be with you, but I have been thinking about that quite a bit, as Kathy often speaks to the enjoyment she has with that and the amazing things that are being done. So it's nice when you can come in and share a little bit with us. Wendy, you're an incredible leader. I just want you to know that. As a woman sitting here in this seat and watching you and listening to you every time, it gives me great pride to know that we have that leadership right now. And I know things will change. I think it has changed a bit, but it's we know that you're in the right spot for us here, and we appreciate that. I do, as a woman and individual in HRM. Couple of questions that I do have is, can you help me understand a little bit more about the uptick in the wellness piece? What kind of data did you have that brought you there? Living in Halifax, living in the society of where we feel often the frustration of people and the concerns they have around the economic costs of so much to do with everyday life. So when I think about, and you know, it translates into poor driving, aggressive driving. It translates into some crime. It translates into, you know, families being in distress and aggravated and frustrated, and then that can sometimes lead to a different family dynamic. So the point here is that I'm just wondering what is behind that uptick. It's encouraging to see and hear that, but I want to know really what am I hearing in relation to that. The other question I have, while I have the time, is if we all know there's significant investment coming here for defense. Defense is a very specialized space where members of the military will be engaged once the defense infrastructure is put in place. The construction of facilities is going to be a big boom for the local economy. I know that, but can you tell me what the other spin-off, just share with us so we fully understand what is the real impact that you can see and would expect to see from that kind of investment? Thank you.
Thank you. So our well-being metrics come from what we call our City Matters survey, and this is a survey we've been doing for many years now. It's carried out by MQO Research here in Halifax. So it's a survey of 500 Halifax residents. And the core question of that metric is a fairly simple one, but it's one that's been developed by the experts in the field, if you will, very similar ones used by the OECD, by Statistics Canada. And it simply asks people to state, on a scale of 0 to 10, how satisfied are you with your life?
Okay.
When we developed the last strategy, this was when we were still within COVID, but we had been kind of riding a bit of a boom. Things have been going well, population growing, and at that particular point in the whole COVID journey, if I can call it that, Atlantic Canada was kind of the golden child of the world, if you remember the New York Times stories and so on. So people were feeling surprisingly good during that particular time. As we were developing the strategy and we'd had this wave of positive momentum, there was a very deliberate decision to make sure we didn't lose sight of those who hadn't come along on that wave, which is why the core metric was focused on the share of people reporting low life satisfaction, so 0 to 4. So that particular strategic metric, we set a baseline of the first survey in 2022 or 2023, and then it improved by going down. You had fewer people reporting low life satisfaction in the first year. And then coming out of COVID, not just here in Halifax, but all across Canada, all across the world, we had this massive inflationary spike that we had not seen in 30 years, which hit people right at their kitchen table, right at their pocketbook. And the share of people reporting low life satisfaction absolutely spiked.
Okay.
It's moved a little bit since then. In the past year, it went up, meaning it got slightly worse from last year to this year, not by a whole lot, maybe even within the statistical margin of error if it was a random survey. What particular factors may have led to that, I'm not sure, but I think in general, when you look at other survey questions, top of mind things are always affordability, cost of living, cost of housing. Those things are still weighing on people's minds.
Okay, thank you.
Your questions on defense. This is what gets me so excited about these opportunities, is the concentric circles of opportunities that come from this spending. So clearly, defense contractors are very interested in what is happening with this defense spending because they're the primes and this is their line of business. But the conversations that I'm having with professional services firms, housing developers, everything from legal to talent to consultants to manufacturers around what is my business's opportunity to provide service into the additional defense spending. And it may be if you're supporting additional companies from all over the world who are landing here, they need everything from banking to legal to a place to have an office to every service you might need under the sun. And so that's, to me, what the bigger opportunity is for Halifax. And the opportunity and challenge will be is how are we unlocking these services such as housing to accommodate these new defense investments that will also benefit the broader community. And I know yourselves and Mayor Fillmore and FCM looking at, how can the broader infrastructure needs of the city be supported part and parcel with these defense investments. So the opportunity is twofold. One, it's for businesses from a wide variety of sectors that are finding a way to capitalize on these opportunities directly or indirectly. And then the second is more for municipal government and leveraging this spending to be able to improve infrastructure that will benefit all residents.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Not seeing any other hands. Would it be okay if I ask a few questions from the chair? Okay, great. Thank you. Like Councillor Kent, I was interested in the commentary on the well-being metric and the fact that things appeared to be not going in the direction we might like it to be. I'm wondering, was there any demographic segmentation on that? So did you see any differences in demographics? I'm curious about who is less happy. So that's one question, and maybe, and I'll have you answer that question. I do have some other questions. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, of course, you can see all these demographic breakdowns on the Halifax Index, so I encourage you all to check that out and see them there. And I'm going to go from memory here, so I'm hoping I get my breakdowns correct. In general, a couple are non-surprising. People with higher incomes tend to report higher levels of life satisfaction than people with lower incomes. People with higher levels of education, which would be correlated with higher incomes, tend to report higher levels of satisfaction than those with lower levels. We have 3 age breakdowns, and I'm pretty sure I'm correct in saying that the highest level would have been reported in the oldest of the 3 categories, I think is 55 and above. Again, you can kind of presume some income correlations there as well, with the middle-aged folks being in the middle and the younger folks who are the ones most struggling with finding apartments and paying rent and student debt at the bottom. Between men and women, I believe there was a very slight difference. I think the male response was slightly above the female, but not by a whole lot. And I believe it's also the case that the average among rural respondents was slightly higher than among urban respondents. I apologize because I'm going from memory here and I might have this slightly wrong, but I believe that was the general tenor of the demographic breakdowns on that well-being metric. One other thing I'll just add, though, you're right, the number did go the wrong way slightly, but other questions we have on people's ratings of Halifax as a place to live and as a place to raise children and raise a family and to retire and so on, still very, very positive. None of them are 100%, but still very positive numbers. So I just want to add that bit of color commentary to those statistics. Thank you.
I'll maybe continue with my question. I can't see my time. Okay, I'll just kind of building on your comment. You mentioned about it's a good place to raise a family, it's a good place to live, we have the ocean close by, etc. When you're talking to companies about locating here, you talked earlier about your achievements. What are some of those key draws that we have in HRM? And are we at risk of, any decline in those, notwithstanding all the proposed new investments, but some of those key draws that you see that I guess what I want to know is what do we need to be supporting as HRM Council to maintain those key draws? So what are those factors? I know there's the economic factors, but what are the, I'll say, softer factors that come up in those discussions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll start from a macro level. In this last year, we saw a slight dip from previous years on companies choosing to locate here. largely viewed as a result of broader geopolitical factors. So previously, we were attracting companies who were looking to export very easily to the U.S. And that, as has been very well documented, is not as clear as it was a year ago, or now a year and a half ago. What we're hearing from companies now is that this instability, there's no clear end on the horizon, and eventually businesses have to make decisions. And so they're getting somewhat unstuck in going forward with their Halifax plans, and we'll be seeing some very significant investment announcements this year. Top of the list for us around opportunities that we can collaborate on with HRM is unlocking employment lands. So as there has been rightfully a very strong focus on increasing lands for housing and amenities related to housing, such as pickleball courts and recreational spaces, which are very, very important. That at the same time has in certain cases somewhat encroached upon lands that otherwise would have been slated for more commercial industrial use. You know, we believe that the balance is important because yes, we 100% need places to live, and we need places for people to work. So we have had some opportunities of late, you know, looking for commercial land space, and just the size of what they were looking for wasn't at this moment available in HRM, but because of course we have lots of land, but as you'd be well aware with the Halifax Water Service area boundary and other constraints, the land that they were looking for was perhaps not serviced yet or into the near future. So that's a real opportunity for us to tackle together, and for us as your economic development organization to bring all the information that we have and feedback from companies that are looking to locate here so that HRM can make informed decisions about what new lands that are used for work spaces, commercial and industrial lands, are to be unlocked next, and at pace, and at a pace fast enough that we can retain these businesses in their decision making to come here, because of course many of these are national and global businesses. They can go anywhere, and so having the physical space to put them is very close to the list in a way that it might not have been. I might not have said this to you 2 years ago. So that's very important. And I would say the opportunity that is coming with the defense spending means that global companies and local companies are looking to locate here and expand here. So now we've got this magnetic pull because the opportunity is real. And how do we make sure that we can say yes and properly welcome these companies and help them be successful?
Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wendy, when we talk about that particular kind of scenario, I can't help but think about the lands that the federal government have purchased in defense in Eastern Passage, which is significant number of acres. I think there's almost 500 acres. And I think about what could be done there. I've been thinking about what could go there, and the community's been thinking about what could go there for a very long time. And when I brought it up to the folks here around potential, it just seemed to get hung out because they didn't know what was going to happen on the lands before we could do any sort of significant planning. But now that the defense has purchased it, it seems to me there's an opportunity there for folks to go to the table, and maybe it's your team to go to the decision makers around, is there an opportunity for some of those lands to be created in the way of commercial properties, industry, commercial, high industry, or significant manufacturing, whatever, in some of those lands, like have an agreement or a space for someone else to purchase. And while I'm planting that seed, one of the things that is missing from a community like Eastern Passage that is slated to be doubled should things go the way that I know Clayton Development wants them and the province wants them to go, in particular with the connector road, is there an opportunity there to even do some sort of, if the military are open to it, some form of planning exercise where the Eastern Passage area could actually also increase the commercial footprint for services and things that are missing, because it just seems to me there's a win for everybody potentially on that site. And it's looking like you're excited to talk about it. I'm excited to hear about it. Let's go there.
Chair to Councillor Kent. So of course I can't speak on behalf of the Canadian Armed Forces, but I can share a few things. One, in speaking to our colleagues with CAF and Base Commander Annick Fortin is on the Halifax Partnership Board of Directors. They're very focused on the social license of having the military here in Halifax. And Halifax was founded because of the military and because of our naval assets. So our connection to the military runs so deep in our culture and our fabric. And they certainly are highly motivated to make sure that these investments also work for the broader citizens of Halifax, because having it work for Halifax means it also will work for these defense investments. The other, word of the month or beyond is dual use. And so how can, as you've described, Councillor, a real willingness and interest in leaning in on these defense investments, including land. Dartmouth Waterfront is another opportunity, because as we're looking at submarine and surface support that could be adjacent to the soon to be redeveloped Dartmouth Waterfront, how are these monies that are coming in being leveraged to support broader community assets and broader business assets? And I'll just close here by saying this defense opportunity is a huge opportunity, but it's not the only opportunity. Yeah. So we have to be mindful of how are we making sure that we continue to have a balanced economy with a wide variety of sectors that are successful here, and that our companies continue to export. Because if our defense companies and the adjacent companies, if their only client is the government of Canada, well, over time, government's focus can change. So how are we helping supporting them build robust businesses, finding new markets, such as with our partners Portsmouth, UK, which is of course a Halifax sister city, to make sure that this momentum is sustained well beyond the current defense spending focus.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wendy, just on our slides, the slide that you have for the Halifax's economy today, I'm just wondering, the title there says Analysis and Costs and Benefits of Halifax's Mooseheads Expansion Proposal. I'm just wondering if that's a little bit of an error or an edit?
Sorry, I can speak to that. That's an administrative issue that I am responsible for. And,
okay, I wasn't sure where that fit, and I was like, okay, we need to fix that. Thanks, Simon. Thanks. I was like, oh my God, got to tell Wendy that happened. We'll fix that.
Just do it publicly, right?
Yeah. I guess just to close, if that's appropriate.
Councillor Daigle-Gammon, I did have another question.
Oh, okay.
If that's okay with the group. Okay. Thank you. I thought you were coming back for another reason. You were, and you were. So we had some discussion, and I really liked your commentary, Wendy, about attracting good paying jobs to help address some of the affordability issues that we're seeing. I also saw in the presentation part of your time with us, the reference, but it wasn't really discussed, was the level of public debt. I think you were probably looking at both all orders of government, perhaps. So that makes me think about the taxation issue as well here in the province. Can you just talk about maybe our overall macro wage gap here in Nova Scotia? Because part of the issue is housing has become more expensive, but at a macro level, incomes haven't really risen to be, I believe, and I want you to perhaps comment on this, they haven't risen to the point where they're comparable to other Canadian markets where the cost of living is similar. But perhaps you can help me understand where we are on these benchmarks. And I know you're going to refer me to the index, but maybe you can speak to that.
Go. Thank you for that. You're absolutely right. These data are covered in the index, but you're right. The phenomenon of rising cost of living and rising cost of housing is not a unique Halifax thing, but it was sharper. It was more acute here. And in the past, in the olden times, if I can call them that, Halifax would have had lower wage levels compared to many other Canadian cities, but we had lower cost of living, at least in terms of housing, which made, on balance, provided a certain level of competitiveness. That gap has narrowed. So the combined advantage we might have had over a Toronto some years ago is not as wide as it was. So you're absolutely right. That is a real issue. One quick point I'll make is that in 2025, Halifax had more housing units under construction than any other per capita than any other major Canadian city. So that's a good sign that maybe we'll see some easing of that pressure going forward. But when you already have these housing pressures, we traditionally down east have had higher costs for food, higher costs for energy because of transportation issues. So those are all pressures. Then on top of it, and I think this is the initial metric you were looking for, I happened to create this table just the other day. If you look at income levels of $50,000, $100,000, $250,000, $500,000, for all of those across all provinces, Nova Scotia has the highest take out of personal income of any province except for Quebec in one specific age bracket. We also are 1 point away from having the highest sales tax figure. So yes, people here pay a bigger tax bite than elsewhere, and that matters. People are aware of that. If you're deciding where you're going to place your business and where you're going to attract the people to work in your business, and you look at the income level you're expecting to pay, and you realize that here versus some other city in Canada, the take-home difference is $8,000 or $10,000. That's meaningful. And as you began with, you're absolutely right as well, that the ability to address those gaps is not helped by the fact that all levels of government are facing debt pressures. It's hard to reduce taxes when you have bills to pay. So, I think all levels of government need to be thinking about tax levels, but also, as we delved into in our productivity series, there's also how we tax. That matters, and I hope a more robust conversation might develop in the coming months and years on that question as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Councillor Daigle-Gammon, I believe you wish to close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so I wish to close by just saying that I think, what this conversation elicited, which was awesome, is just about an understanding of what the opportunities are in front of us from the next 3 years, but also what some of the challenges are. And sometimes they are one and the same. But I do believe that the Halifax Partnership has the right strategy and approach to how do we build this strategy. They have the right people, and they're inviting the right people at the table to get this done. Sometimes we will ask that a similar presentation go to regional council from here. But this time I think I would not ask that, because I think let's go get the work done, get the strategy. The first item says that we're going to come back to CPED with a strategy, and maybe that's the time that we'll get all of council if they're not here at that CPED meeting. But let's get on with the great work that we know that the Halifax Partnership has the capacity to do. So with that, I would call for the question.
Thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Contrary minded, nay. The motion has passed. Thank you to our friends at the partnership, Wendy and Innie, and thank you for coming in, and look forward to seeing the full strategy.
To join us on September 21st when we will be hosting Tiff Macklem, the Governor of the Bank of Canada, at a not-to-be-missed event. We look forward to seeing you then.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and following along with our movement of the agenda, we'll now move to item 8.2, the Affordable Housing Strategy Project Update. And I see a number of people coming forward. Aaron Murnahan and Dave Patterson. So looking forward to your presentation when you're ready.
Perfect. I'll get started. Thank you. Dave Patterson with the Housing Accelerator Fund program in Planning and Development. I'm joined with Aaron Murnahan, the manager of that program, and happy to present an update to CPED for our work on the affordable housing strategy. As members of the committee are aware, we are coming towards the tail end of our Housing Accelerator Fund program. That agreement began in October 2023. And lasted for 3 years. We committed through the Housing Accelerator Fund to 11 initiatives listed on the screen here. The final initiative due by October 2026 is the creation of an affordable housing strategy with dedicated staffing to support the development of affordable housing ongoing in the municipality. And just as an update, the total half funding was a $80 million investment from the federal government. We've received $60 million of that. The final installment of $20 million is contingent on meeting this deadline, as well as our permit targets. And really, we're looking at this to transition from the bump in staffing that we've seen in the last 3 years, supported by HAF. We're winding down some of those temporary programs and looking to use the strategy to guide us moving forward. Today's meeting, we're seeking some initial committee feedback on the emerging directions. Those emerging directions are in the report as attachment C. And broadly, the affordable housing strategy objectives are to clarify that municipal role in affordable housing amongst other levels of government and with the community sector, provide a framework to evaluate our current housing programs, and to consider new initiatives moving forward. It's really critical for us to emphasize this is building on previous work. Attachment A of the staff report contains links to about 80 staff reports in the last 10 or so years related to housing and affordable housing. Some of those key pieces of work are on the screen here that we're building on. In 2013, Regional Council endorsed our work with the Housing and Homelessness Partnership, which is a table of 3 levels of government, the United Way, and the community housing sector to address housing and homelessness issues. That work led to the Affordable Housing Work Plan in 2018, which in turn led to many of the associated programs we're familiar with: bonus zoning, the grant program, permit fee waivers, and tax relief. The regional plan has a priority for increasing the supply of safe, sustainable, and affordable housing throughout communities. And the Strat Plan for 2026 to 2030 promotes collaboration for delivering affordable housing. And then looking at this sort of in a timeline format, as many will be aware, in 1995, the Service Exchange moved delivery of social and public housing from a municipal responsibility to the province. And really, the work in affordable housing really ramped up in that 2015 time period till now with those programs. I'll also point out the Rapid Housing Initiative also was launched through the National Housing Strategy. And through the city's stream, HRM was successful in funding 7 deeply affordable housing projects, all now occupied. And of course, the Housing Accelerator Fund and the housing strategy to follow. It's really critical that we sort of have some shared definitions of what affordable housing means. It's a constant question that we have in these discussions is, what do you really mean by affordable? To remind everyone, the HRM Charter defines affordable housing as housing that meets the needs of a variety of households in the low to moderate income range. Whereas federally, the measure of affordable housing is it's considered affordable if a household can achieve adequate housing with 30% of their before-tax income. And with both of these definitions, I'd really emphasize that it's never a one-size-fits-all solution. Affordable housing is relative to the household, and it's also relative to the market and the supply that exists. As a model for framing the housing strategy, we've developed the housing wheel, adapted from other jurisdictions that use similar models, with 4 quadrants of housing. I'll start on the bottom left with emergency and transitional options, and these are options that exist with the express intent of bringing people out of homelessness situations and into permanent options. Supportive and deeply affordable housing serves those low-income individuals and households in need of deeply affordable housing and supports. It's critical to understand that typically the supportive and deeply affordable housing sector requires ongoing provincial funding for operating in most cases. Whereas moving to the top right quadrant, non-market housing, in our context, mainly delivered by nonprofits, but also some private sector developers, is offering housing that is kept below market and serves the needs more of moderate income households. And then finally, market housing comprises about 96 to 97% of housing in the region, whether that's owned or rented. And then to really situate the affordable housing strategy amongst the work that you're already familiar with, starting again with the market housing side, our regional planning framework, which encompasses both the regional plan, community plans, and suburban plan, a primary goal is to achieve mixed neighborhoods, complete communities, the needed infrastructure for growth, and to address the overall undersupply of housing. On the left side, the framework to address homelessness works with those most vulnerable to exit homelessness or to be diverted from becoming homeless through person-focused assertive housing outreach to ensure that the options match the needs of individuals. And we really see the affordable housing strategy as bridging that gap between the two, where we're looking at the non-market housing side from the deeply affordable to the non-market or moderately affordable end of the spectrum. We did engage throughout the fall and winter with residents, housing providers, as well as the CMHC, Build Canada Homes, the Housing and Homelessness Partnership, as well as financial institutions. We had over 600, nearly 600 completions of surveys, a number of meetings and workshops as well. We are continuing to engage the private sector development industry as well in coordination with our suburban planning work. Key themes, and again, for more background on this, the What We Heard report is included as attachment B. Especially when speaking with other levels of government, with financial institutions and the housing sector, the nonprofit housing providers, there was broad encouragement to continue existing programs, and we heard lots about the success of how that's brought many projects to the finish line, whether that's the permit fee waiver program, the tax relief program, or the grant program. And related to that, continuing to facilitate senior government funding is seen as a key role for the municipality in this work. We, concurrent with the affordable housing strategy work, we brought forward the pilot program for surplus municipal land for affordable housing. That is coming for public hearing next week, the results of that pilot program. But we heard lots of feedback about the importance and some of the criteria for providing developable surplus municipal land. Reducing planning barriers, again, is something that we're hearing about throughout the sector. Building awareness and common understanding, supporting those experiencing homelessness. And finally, really related to the previous presentation you had from the partnership, around broad concerns around affordability and cost of living are front and center in all the conversations that we've had with community. So how do we use that feedback? We took that feedback of what we heard, along with research and best practices and an analysis of our existing programs, and we're putting that through lenses of our own municipal organizational structure. in terms of addressing affordable housing, several business units are involved in that work, not just planning and development. So we're looking at our organizational structure, our organizational capacity, and critically our jurisdiction with internal coordination and work planning. That's led to the emerging directions. And as mentioned previously, we're expecting to bring the strategy and implementation plan to CPED and Regional Council by October. I'll run through really briefly the contents of the emerging directions in attachment C. The vision is that the municipality works with partners so that residents have affordable and suitable housing options. And this is guided by principles around complete communities, thinking long-term, providing access to opportunities, being responsive, and being data-driven in our work. Really critical to articulate the municipal role in affordable housing in this, where predominantly the provincial and federal governments take the bulk of the responsibility for housing and the bulk of the funding for housing. There is a key municipal role in coordinating our work on the ground, our work in communities with those programs, and ensuring that we can coordinate our communities with those opportunities. Core mandate of the municipality is obviously land use and infrastructure and ensuring that those are in place to support housing. And then something that we're finding more and more often is the need to really prioritize scarce resources and scarce incentives. So we've worked with prioritization criteria through our grant program and found a lot of success in these prioritization criteria and connected them over here into the strategy more broadly, where we propose continuing to support projects that have that support from other levels of government, that have a strong financial viability, continuing to prioritize deep and affordable, long-lasting affordability, responding to needs in community, responding to those experiencing homelessness, and a focus on projects with high levels of sustainability, accessibility, and social equity. And finally, where the rubber hits the road, the action areas. The emerging directions list 24 action areas. I won't go through all of them in the presentation, but we have a few of them listed here. I'll just run through these in the next couple minutes, and then I'll turn it over to Aaron for some final thoughts. A few of those draft actions, the directions in the affordable housing strategy would ask us to regularly update the housing needs assessment. Typically, we would update this every 5 years in line with census data releases. So the May 2026 census data is expected to come out late next year. And we would work with that data to update our housing needs assessment and really make sure that we're working with the best data around core housing need. Right now, we're a little bit limited in that our last census data was from 2021. So central to the pandemic relief efforts and a little bit challenging to use that data in the current context. Working with our colleagues in community planning, continuing to update planning documents to enable diverse housing options and reducing barriers to the delivery of non-market housing especially, looking at some of the discretionary processes as well as the land use bylaws in that work. And as council is aware, while we have paused moving forward on an inclusionary zoning program, we do have direction to keep working on that in the background, especially as economics change, and if we're, say, working in growth areas as well. There's options to think about inclusionary zoning in combination with bonus zoning to achieve our goals. I mentioned the direction continuing to administer our existing incentives for nonprofit-led projects, the grants program, permit fee waiver, and tax relief program. We are also looking to work with our colleagues in finance to review the affordable housing tax relief program. And then some new initiatives that are within consideration of the emerging directions is a launch for a permanent surplus lands program following the lessons learned of that pilot. Continuing to support the Cogswell District project as directed by Regional Council through that program. Working with partners to support the African Nova Scotian housing strategy and exploring co-location of non-market housing with the site on the site of municipal facilities. So that's a selection of some of the actions. There's a few more in there if you dig into attachment C. But I wanted to really turn over to next steps and what you can expect to hear from us in the next few months. We're currently working on refining the final strategy and the implementation plan. And so with each of those directions, we're looking at the steps and sub-actions, the timing that these actions would happen over the next 10 years, and how those responsibilities are delegated amongst business units and our work with partner organizations. Nearly all of the draft directions have financial policy and resource implications, and so we want to be able to facilitate a strong conversation on these. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron to speak towards financial implications.
Thank you, Dave. I get the fun slide. Good morning, members of CPED. Aaron Murnahan, manager of the Housing Accelerator Fund program. When we made the application for the HAF program in 2023, it was anticipated that we would have several, in fact, a couple dozen permanent staff positions that would stem from that work and carry some of that work long into the future. But obviously we are in a fiscally constrained environment this year and likely next and potentially years after. So with that in mind, we've spoken with many counselors as part of our internal engagement as part of this work. And there are concerns from many of you and your colleagues and other members of the organization that continuing to expand our work into an area of provincial responsibility at a time when we are fiscally constrained is a bit of a concern. So with that in mind, we've been quite conservative in terms of considering the resource needs of programs moving forward and have really focused heavily on legacy programs that stem back to that Housing and Homelessness Partnership, the pre-HAF work that we know many nonprofit housing providers have grown to rely on, but also that we know has been extremely impactful in our work over the last several years, with over 1,400 units through those programs assisted, such as the Affordable Housing Grant Program. So we would anticipate, as part of our resourcing for this work, that we will have some details for you coming in August with the final draft of these documents that will lay out sort of the minimal staffing requirements that we'll need to keep these legacy programs running. And we'll be looking at options for other programs that we've heard a lot about, such as our surplus lands for affordable housing program, which we're quite challenged to resource right now. And we do have a public hearing coming before Regional Council on Tuesday that will be finishing out the pilot program on surplus lands for affordable housing. But there has been natural program growth, obviously, in the wake of the housing crisis and the affordability crisis that we're in. The demand for the programs that we run, such as our Affordable Housing Grant Program, have grown considerably. So the staff, the pre-HAF staff that we have in planning and development administering those programs is not going to be sufficient to keep those programs running at an adequate level into the future. So there is anticipated to be some additional staffing resources requested. Those will be outlined, as I mentioned, in August, but we will bring a decision to you on those permanent resources as part of the 27-28 budget and business plan in March of this year. I'll turn back over to Dave.
Thank you, Aaron. That's actually the conclusion of our presentation. Our recommendation is for CPED to forward the staff report to Regional Council as an information item only. And as mentioned, we'll be following up with the final strategy in the coming months.
Thank you, Dave and Aaron. And I see Councillor Kent is on the board. Councillor Kent, would you put the motion on the floor, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee, that's not the right one, recommend, adopt the that's not the right one either, sorry. 8.2. Thank you. Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee for the staff report dated April 29th, 2026 to Regional Council as an information item only. That was the last.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Do I have thank you, Councillor Santama, for the second. Go ahead, Councillor
Yes,
Kent.
thank you. I think just first of all, thank you all for the work that you do. It's clearly is really important to our city and to this council. I'm glad you recognize the piece around, you know, we're continuing to do the work that we know that the province is responsible for, and but it also it creates the challenges for you guys, you folks, to be able to reach the targets that I know that you want to make, you know, on our behalf. So I'm looking forward to that report in August to see what where we can fully go with this. I really appreciated as well the engagement that we were able to have as councillors to have our input in a more, you know, more frank and kind of and fulsome discussion prior to this coming forward. So I believe too is that it certainly should be a staff report in this case. Those who want to have an opportunity to speak to it certainly can pull it forward. But in the meantime, we're waiting for that August report to, I think, have a bigger conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Not seeing any other names on the board. I do have a few questions and comments with the approval of the committee. I will go ahead. Okay. So first question I have, and I may know the answer to this, but you chose, it seems like the strategy, the affordable part of the strategy focuses on the non-market affordability. And it's interesting. I found that interesting because this strategy is part of our half commitment to the federal government. The reason we're undertaking it for all kinds of good reasons, good planning reasons. You need a strategy first. But also, we had a commitment under half to develop this strategy. So I'm really curious as to why we didn't look at the federal government's definition of affordability, which is, you know, 30% of income. And I know you said, well, that's difficult to measure. And yes, I understand that, but that is the standard measure that financial institutions use, et cetera. So I'm curious about that. And the reason why I am curious is I hear from lots of people that are either in or interested in getting into market housing. And they're very challenged to get into market housing. I also hear from many new homeowners who, you know, suffer under the large burden of property taxes relative to those that have owned their homes for a longer time. So that's why I'm interested in this, why you chose to have this definition. The second question, I'll just get it in because unfortunately I don't see time, so I'll go really quickly. My second question relates to, and perhaps this is a question for another team, but I understand we're doing some kind of a system to be able to look at our grants program and tax relief and look at all the funding that goes into the non-market housing in a holistic way, so we can see, you know, how much funding is actually being allocated, and, you know, put a value on, you know, the land that's given, the tax relief, as well as the direct grant. And so we can look at an organization that comes forward and we can see the overall contribution that HRM is making to this. I know when we went through our budget discussion, we had a lot of discussion. We were trying to look at some reductions and we didn't have accurate numbers. We didn't know the value of contribution. And, you know, as elected officials, our residents expect us to know where the money is going, and not only the revenue, but the foregone revenue. So maybe you can, that's kind of where I'm coming from on this.
I'll take a stab at your questions there. The first question being on the definition. The second one, the program we're referring to is the centralized reporting program as well. So I'll speak to those as much as I can. On centralized reporting, that is a finance program, so I'll share what I can, what I know, which will hopefully help, and we can follow up if needed. first of all, focusing on the, I think your first question was on our focus on the non-market housing as opposed to affordability across the board, including in the market and availability. And I guess I don't want to de-emphasize that larger work. We're really working on that larger work as we work through the Strategic Growth Infrastructure Priorities Plan and the Regional Plan to ensure the overall supply of housing. One of the things that we found really challenging was the municipal jurisdiction, where a lot of those cases around the cost of rent is really in the provincial jurisdiction. So we did actually have lots of feedback in our survey around fixed term leases, around taxation, around tax levels. And that all really is that's critical in the background. And what we've come to find in the last 5 to 10 years is that the market's really not serving, especially newly built market housing, is not serving the needs of moderate income individuals. And so there is some real macroeconomic factors to bring into that conversation. We were trying to really focus on sort of the bite-sized piece of work that we're able to do, especially through our financial incentives and through the tax relief program, which has primarily focused on the nonprofit sector. The other part of your question there, and just to follow up, there is a staff report coming your way, an information report coming your way on the impact of the capped assessment program on the housing market. I think that's coming forward in the next few weeks, so look out for that. That's closely related to this work around taxation. The other part of your question was on the definition of affordable housing, and we really do refer to both of those definitions. The HRM Charter really does stipulate a definition we have to use for affordable housing, and that's that one that is the housing for the need that meets the needs of a variety of households in the moderate to low income range. A bit of a broad definition, but we do look at that federal definition of core housing need as well, and we also connect to those federal and provincial funding programs, which actually have various benchmarks for where they would fund projects, from deeply affordable up to that moderate level of affordability. So I don't want to sort of characterize it that we only use one and not the other. We really do look at all of those when we're running our programs. Your second question, the Centralized Reporting Project is an ongoing program within the business of our Finance and Asset Management group. And that program, we met with finance actually in the last week or two, and they're looking to bring that forward to the next 2 or 3 years through their work, where they're looking at every sector of how much money is being either foregone or granted to those either organizations or sectors to give you as council a better picture of where that money is going. And you're very right that it's a little bit hard to follow the money sometimes. So this work does support that larger program.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Dave. Not seeing any other any names on the board, I'll ask if someone would like to call for the question. Thank you, Councillor Kent. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand or indicate by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. Okay, the motion has passed. Thank you. So now we will go back to item number 7. Which is Councillor item 7 is a motion of rescission, which was deferred from May 21, 2026, and the motion is on the floor from the previous meeting. It was moved by Councillor Saint-Amand and seconded by Councillor Kent. So there were a few questions around this, and I understand we have Hanita. Hanita is with us to perhaps answer some of those questions. And I did wish to just remind the committee that this vote, because it's a motion of rescission, requires a 2/3 majority support to be approved. So and maybe people will introduce themselves. Thank you. I'll go over to you.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, councillors. I'm Hanita Koblenz. I'm a principal planner with Public Works, and I look after the streetscaping program. And with me today is my manager, Krista Cumming, manager of design engineering in Public Works.
Thank you. Councillor Saint-Amand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think really what I'm looking to do is ask a couple of questions that I think are at least in the spirit of the questions that our Deputy Mayor had asked during our last meeting, and she's unable to join us today. Hopefully you got a chance to review the recording of our last meeting so that if I get any of the intent wrong, you'll still be able to answer the question correctly. I think what we're really just after is to ensure that were this motion to be rescinded, that we aren't taking away from an opportunity that might otherwise be presented in order to either bolster or help better define the streetscaping as it applies to our suburban areas. Recognizing my understanding based on the exchanges of emails that occurred leading up to this coming from staff was that there's enough direction within the regional plan and the various different documents that guide how your department works, that all of what needed ultimately to be captured within this particular staff report, for all intents and purposes, is largely covered. It may not be explicitly covered, and maybe that's where the distinctions really lie. So can you speak to whether or not the level of specificity of this particular staff report would have provided additional guidance and clarity to your department on how to approach streetscaping and beautification and planning within the suburban areas where we have very disparate Main Street areas in the suburban areas as compared to what is traditionally found in the core?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Saint-Amand, through the chair to the councillor. Yeah, staff do believe there is sufficient guidance to explore streetscaping, which we kind of broadly define as the place value of streets that is realized through the use of enhanced materials, decorative features, things like unit pavers, horticultural plantings, decorative lighting, things like that. There is broad policy support for exploring that place value of streets in addition to its link value, how streets are used for transportation of various modes through the integrated mobility plans, complete streets approach, which has been adopted into the municipal design guidelines that staff use every day in the design of streets and in the planning of new streets and new subdivisions, which applies in suburban areas. The only thing that we might do differently in the suburban areas versus the regional center, where there is a council administrative order that supports streetscaping explicitly, is we might through a functional planning process for a street in a suburban area, we would come back to council for an approval of the full scope of what might be considered in changing the character of a street. If that includes streetscaping, we would raise the financial implications of doing so in the functional plan and seek council approval for the additional capital budget that might be needed to implement those, and the maintenance and budget implications of using enhanced materials. Additional guidance and clarity that might be realized through the motion, should it pardon me, result in a similar like policy that explicitly supports streetscaping in suburban centers, would really we feel premature, because it would really benefit from from an approved suburban plan, which sets out the high-level vision and direction of where council's priorities are in the suburban area for a number of things, including streetscaping, if streetscaping is a priority or not, and if so, what types of locations should be considered for streetscaping? Because there are financial implications. So I guess to sum it all up, streetscaping in the suburban areas is not precluded by not having this motion. It would be identified in functional planning, brought to council for project by project approval, like we did on Dutch Village Road. A broader policy might be more appropriate kind of after a suburban plan is approved, that we can use to take direction from.
Okay, thank you. I'll happily let the rest of the committee ask a few questions, and I'll come back with more.
Councillor Saint-Amand, I don't see any other people on the board, so you may continue.
Thank you. Actually, you touched on one of the questions that I would have raised, and I was curious to know whether or not this would wind up being folded into the suburban plan, or at least, the suburban plan would have some language that at least provides the connective tissue between the regional plan and the suburban plan, and the language that would be necessary to define how the streetscaping would be applied when we get into the suburban areas. So it sounds like maybe it'll be better defined once the suburban plan comes forward, whether that language is included or not. There will be an opportunity to provide language around what streetscaping should look like in the suburban areas on the basis of the suburban plan. So we are in a bit of a chicken and egg moment, potentially anyway, as far as defining what those criteria are. I am curious, one of the things that I thought Deputy Mayor Cuttle brought up that I thought was really valuable to re-explore is the one thing that I note is that in any attempt to provide guidance on suburban planning for streetscaping is this relationship that effort has with local area business improvement districts, which are not, they're not all of the same size, shape, scope, and Bedford doesn't even have one. So there are suburban areas that will lack that partnership with the municipality through these other organizations. And so there was at least a modicum of concern that because there isn't that partnership or that partner in the space, that there would be a weakness inherent in applying any kind of plan were we not to dictate one at the municipal level for the suburban areas. Maybe that's addressed by the chicken and egg philosophy of handling that after the suburban plan comes forward, but I wondered if you could speak to what the relationship is with the bids and how actively they participate in the streetscaping in their respective areas, especially since I know we have some suburban bids, but we don't have bids in all suburban areas either.
So I noted, thank you, Councillor and Madam Chair, through you to the committee members. I just heard I guess a two-part question. First of all, to speak to will the suburban plan have enough connective tissue to guide streetscaping in the suburban areas? I can't fully answer that. I think it will. We are aware that there's been recent Main Street visioning workshops. They were kind of centered around streets. There is a broad recognition that streets do serve as public spaces. A lot of the time the residents spend in public space is on our city streets. We have been engaged with the land use planners who are formulating the suburban plan, and will certainly try to help ensure that connective tissue is there if the motion is rescinded. Another alternative that committee members may wish to consider is simply deferring the motion or clarifying that the motion should, the staff report and the options and opportunities in a program should take direction from the suburban plan once it's approved. That could be one way of addressing those concerns and ensuring that connective tissue stays in place. And then with regards to the second question, what's the relationship between the BIDs and streetscaping?
I guess it's a historically streetscaping. This is way before my time, and my observation has been there have been BIDs that have developed and they've advocated for streetscaping, and council has delivered it. This happened in the regional, various regional center areas like downtown Dartmouth. There was a streetscaping project on Portland Street and in the early 2000s, most recently, the Downtown Business Association and the Halifax Economic Strategy really promoted investment in the public realm, and the Downtown Business Association, the Spring Garden Business Association strongly supported those, and significant work was done on Argyle, Spring Garden, and there were streetscaping efforts in the suburban BIDs in the early mid 2000s as well. There were fewer opportunities in the streets as they exist, and the streetscaping program did add medians with trees and Sackville Drive and Main Street Dartmouth and Heron Cove Road around those BIDs. There were, so historically there's been a connection. It's been one mostly of advocacy. I think some of the BIDs also have like teams that assist with litter collection, but mostly it's the municipal operations enhanced maintenance areas team that supports the maintenance of those streetscaped areas. After the regional center plan was adopted, and then the regional center streetscaping administrative order was asked for by council and delivered, and created the regional center streetscaping program. This is that connective tissue, if you will, from the planning policy to the program, is the program prioritizes the use of the streetscaping materials in areas that were targeted for infill, pretty intense infill associated with the center plan, infill growth and heritage and culture areas. So it there are streetscaping efforts happening outside of BIDs in the regional center that really took direction from the values and the vision for growth identified in the regional center plan. If there's anything else you want to add, Krista?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saint-Amand. Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm a little bit confused now. I thought I knew what we were doing here for a minute, and so some of this conversation hasn't looked, and I guess I just want to reframe for myself. So this motion of rescission came at the request of staff, right? Because, and if I got this right, and please help me when I was reading through everything, because I wasn't in council on January 2020, came later. And the request for it to be rescission is because we think that the suburban plan is going to address the streetscaping, or we think that I guess I just really need some clearer language about why. And then, when I did look at this, when I first came in, I remember like suburban bids, I don't know what that definition is anymore. The Greater Burnside Business Association tried to become a bid, but they lost that. So who's suburban bids? Like, we've got the Sackville Business Association, we have the Fall River and Area Business Association. Are we clumping them all under that definition of suburban bids? I don't think so. So I guess in that second part, I'm still trying to understand, who is it that you're listening to, or who is it that you were going to go out and listen to? And if this motion of rescission is approved, then what are we losing? Does that question make any sense at all? Yes. Oh, good. Thank you, Krista.
Makes perfect sense.
There's sort of two parts, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, why don't I take a stab, Krista, and Sorry if it is confusing. Business improvement districts, we understand them to be areas of business that have, I don't know how they start their process, but they elect to be taxed, not taxed, they elect to collect a fee to run their organization.
Yeah,
that is
actually, I
collected
know how
through-
bids happen, but
through the-
this language of suburban bids.
So yeah, suburban would be anything outside the regional center. So there are 3 suburban BIDs that I'm aware of:
3.
Sackville Drive, Spry Field, and Main Street. The others are business associations,
Yes.
so they're not like
not
HRM
bids.
doesn't collect their fees on the commercial tax base and send them back to, so the organizations can run their organization. So what will the suburban plan address? Streetscaping? I think that was your question. I think what the municipal planning strategies do is they sort of identify vision and direction and priorities for community. For land, they directly inform land use policy through the creation of land use bylaws, but they also define sort of broad vision and direction for what's important in communities, and that might be different in suburban areas than in the regional center. So the center plan, for example, really prioritizes pedestrians and pedestrian walkability and infill high density. So that's kind of where the streetscaping efforts are tied to. A suburban plan might have other priorities. Today's suburbs are very auto-oriented. There's ways to streetscape scenic drives. There's also a bus rapid transit strategy that may be implemented. There's ways to enhance the placemaking character around transit stations.
So I guess the other part of my question is, and I've only got 42 seconds, if this motion of rescission is approved, what is gained and what is lost?
Do you want to take a step?
Yeah, I can. Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. I'm Krista Cumming, the Manager of Engineering Design, and the streetscaping team is part of my team. So I think just to give a bit of background on why this is coming before you, we had this report on our plates for quite some time, and realizing that, as Hanita's explained, we're really looking for further land use planning direction and suburban planning direction in order to inform the direction that streetscaping would take in suburban areas. And so that's the connection, is that the suburban plan will inform land use, and there are discussions about how communities are formed and what land use uses will be supported through the suburban planning exercise. And there are conversations about how streets are designed in order to support those communities in the all the different formats that they take. So as Hanita's highlighting, the approach that would be taken in the regional center, for example, might not be the same as it would be in a suburban area, because the suburban area has different needs. These communities have different wishes. They have different visions for their main streets. And that exercise is ongoing, as I think that has been reflected by councillors' interest in these main street workshops and what's coming out of those. So I think that there are kind of potentially two options that I see, is that, we do appreciate that there's an interest and a motive for streetscaping in suburban areas. It seems premature for us to write an administrative order. I think that would be the appropriate tool. It seems premature for us to really be putting a lot of energy into that before the suburban planning exercise is complete and approved by council. So we have this sort of dangling report. And we acknowledge that the timing isn't great. It really should be informed by the suburban plan
Okay.
and whatever comes out of that.
Okay.
So thinking that maybe it's better to rescind the motion at this point so that a new motion can be struck that strikes the right chord with the outcomes of the suburban plan.
Got it.
And we don't have these sort of two things that we're trying to mash together. At the same time, at the staff level, and I think that this is something maybe that the committee needs to hear, is that we do appreciate streetscaping, creating places in suburban communities, as in the regional center. We do already have policy that we're reflecting on that informs us to make sure that we're building beautiful communities and beautiful streets for everyone that function the way that they need to function within the budget that we're given and all of these other things. So I think that really remembering that we're not abandoning the best practices, or, you know, if this motion is rescinded, it doesn't mean that staff go back and say, let's cross out all the benches and, you know, no more trees. Like, that's not at all the way that it's approached. And just to echo some of the things that Anita said, apart from sort of professional best practice and us bringing things to council that we think are things that will strengthen our communities, we already have the IMP, we already have the municipal design guidelines, which is a, you know, very detailed document that talks about places and creating vibrant places for people, as well as transportation links. And this is all happening in the right of way. So, yeah, I don't think that we're losing much, really. I think that regardless, because of the way that budgeting has been going, and we totally appreciate why, there isn't much funding for this in the meantime anyway. And we're looking to the suburban plan to further inform us. So at this point, it seems like rescission is the way to go.
Great.
Because council can be motivated by that suburban planning exercise, new wind in the sails, a new idea of what we're committing to. Like, we being council's not actually me, but as an organization, what we want to commit to in terms of suburban streetscaping.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Not seeing any other names on the board. Are we ready to call for the question? Okay, the question has been called for. Just noting again, we do require a 2/3 majority on this one. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Contrary minded, nay. The motion has passed. Thank you very much. Thank you to our presenters. And thank you, Councillor Saint-Amand. Okay, moving along very quickly to deferred business, Transom Drive Park Plan, and we have Elizabeth Bray with us today. And I understand Elizabeth has a brief presentation. Thank you. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
So good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Bray. I work in policy and planning, and today I will be presenting the Transom Drive Park Plan. So Transom Drive is located at 195 Drive in Bedford, Transom Drive in Bedford, sorry. It is approximately 2 hectares and has been previously improved with a playground, tennis court, seating, and pathways. However, most of the park remains in an unfinished state. Based on its existing condition, as well as communication received from the former local councillor and community, the need for a park plan to guide future improvements was included in the municipality's 2024-2025 business plan. So to understand the park's existing conditions, staff conducted site visit and used desktop analysis, and through this process, several findings were identified, which include the following. The northern portion of the site is flat and favorable for development, while its central and southern areas contain steep terrain, exposed bedrock, and mature vegetation. It may be difficult for most users to access the northern area from the park's southern entrance and would require significant grading and infrastructure to connect the two areas. To inform the location of future amenities, the 6-meter setback was applied from the nearby properties, and through this process, it was also identified that half of the existing playground falls within this setback. Though the park is large, due to its existing configuration, topography, and the limited availability of on-street parking, only amenities suitable for a neighborhood park should be considered. In addition, due to the proximity of nearby residences, facilities associated with high noise levels, such as pickleball or off-leash areas, are not considered appropriate. The existing tennis courts are not consistent with standards identified by Tennis Nova Scotia and are often used to support a variety of recreational facilities. Improvements to the tennis courts, as well as the implementation of additional court facility, could benefit users. So, to develop the concept plan, and through the analysis process, we developed 2 preliminary concept plans, and these were presented to the community alongside a series of questions using the online Shape Your City platform. Information about the survey can be found in attachment C of the report. And these are just kind of the findings. And then through this process, we developed the final concept plan, and the intent of the final design is to improve the site's overall layout, function, and complement the use of existing facilities. The proposed facilities also are focused in a central gathering area in the park's northern area and include improvements such as seating, a picnic area, and a new relocated playground and play lawn. The plan also identifies retaining and recapitalizing both tennis courts, as well as the implementation of a new multi-use court facility. In addition, lighting is proposed along the central pathways surrounding the court facilities to improve safety for park users and extend the park's usable hours. And new pathways are also recommended to improve circulation within the park, as well as connectivity to the surrounding area. Additional information about the proposed improvements in the overall plan can be found in attachment B. To manage the plan's overall cost, 2 phases are proposed. Improvements identified within the first phase include major earthwork projects, pathways, lighting, and the play lawn, while phase 2 includes multi-use court lighting, secondary pathways, and the recapitalization of the playground and tennis courts. Phase 1 is proposed to take place in the next 3 to 5 years, and phase 2 within the next 6 to 10. However, timelines are dependent on capital budget priorities and may vary. This concludes my presentation. I welcome any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. And Councillor Saint-Amand, would you like to put the motion on the floor, please?
I'd be happy to. I move that the Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council 1, adopt the Transom Drive Park Plan as a guiding document to guide future improvements for Transom Drive Park, and 2, direct the Chief Administrative Officer to consider the prioritization of the improvements identified within the Transom Park Plan within future business plans and capital budgets.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Saint-Amand.
Thank you so much. This has been a long time coming. You and I have had a couple of discussions about this coming park plan. I'm encouraged to see so much forward thinking in how to reutilize the space, or recognizing some of the challenges of the geography and the limitations of what was placed there originally versus what we might aspire to have there in the future. Recognizing for the moment that this is a much longer term plan, all of us will wind up having to reoffer and wind up around the table to make this decision sometime in the future. But I'm encouraged to see what it will wind up meaning for the community. I think the recap of the multi-use court is fantastic. I think they're going to really appreciate the thoughtfulness of the redesign. So I'm happy to support this. Obviously, there are no financial implications to us whatsoever at this point. We're really just talking about documenting the plan for some time in the future and for some council in the future to worry about how to fit it into the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Saint-Amand. I'm not seeing any other councillors on the board. I wonder if we'd like to call, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought it was going to be quick enough. Just a little humor. So a long time coming. Let's see, lights in McDonald Sports Park. We've been waiting since how long is a long time coming? That's fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have someone calling for the question? Okay, thank you, Councillor St. Amand. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Contrary minded, nay. The motion has passed. And thank you, Elizabeth, for that very quick presentation that worked for us. We are now going to be moving to our public participation. Okay.
If we can just also perhaps jump back up to correspondence and petitions just before we do that. Madam Chair.
Okay, right. And we don't have any notices of table matters. Correspondence, was any correspondence received?
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that correspondence was received and circulated for items 8.2, 11, and information item 3.
Okay, thank you. And given that we're getting very close to noon, could I have a motion to extend the meeting until 12:15? Thank you, Councillor St. Amand, and seconded by Councillor Daigle-Gammon. All those in favor, please raise your hand or signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. The motion has passed. So I will ask if there are any petitions that the clerk has or or councillors have. Seeing no movement, we don't have any petitions, we don't have any presentations or any additional. So we're now at public participation, and we have had three registered speakers. So I'll ask Debbie Lloyd from Bedford to come forward, please. And thank you, Debbie, for your patience.
So my name is Debbie Lloyd. I currently live in Bedford, although from Eastern Passage. Hi, Becky. So do I just jump right in, guys? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
I'm a senior. I'm a few months shy of 70 years old. All the stuff you guys talked about today was so interesting to me because I'm one of those low-income people who I moved back to Nova Scotia after 7 years because actually when I moved back last year, you guys were much more affordable than anybody else. And I found myself, trying to find affordable housing here. I'm a senior, so obviously I'm on old age security and CPP. That only goes so far. I can share with you, I get $2,000 a month. My rent is $1,600. And my hydro here is $260 approximately every month. I'm paying equal monthly payments. And then that doesn't count my telephone or my little internet box, which Trudeau got for us really cheap. So I'm really stretched. I end up with about $25 left over every month for food. So and I'm sorry if I get emotional, but I created a product that I make with crafts, and my senior friends do the sewing for me, and it's a one-of-a-kind product for dogs. And I found by going to the small markets over at Elderly, I was doing okay, but the hydro went up and other things. So I was waiting with bated breath to get one of these covenant spots, and maybe I could have the map put up now, Simon, thank you. These covenant spots that are over at the boardwalk in Halifax. They're $350 plus tax, and when I applied, which was back on March the 3rd at 9 o'clock in the morning, again, my age comes into effect. I'm not computer literate at all, so it actually took me about 45 minutes to get it fully uploaded and submitted. I was told that the first three choices I had were taken within the first 3 minutes, which I think is totally impossible to fill out these forms in 3 minutes and have them gone. It seems that there is something going on that I have concern for. I wrote that report based as an investigator because that's what my career is undercover special investigator. That's what I did for 35 years. And I have training with Toronto Police, OPP, and the RCMP in undercover work. So the information that I've gathered over on the boardwalk is that there are what I call scalper vendors who are not being moved on, who have not been trespassed, and they legally can be trespassed. I have found that the 9 spots on the what I call the new side, the Sackville Landing side of the boardwalk, they were charged and paid exactly the same amount as I did for Nathan's Green. And if you look at the map, I've circled the 2 areas. I put a whole bunch of arrows for Sackville Landing side. They have all these symbols on that side. Now, this is a map that is handed out to every cruise ship member as they get off the cruise ships in Halifax. Every tourist that goes to an information booth, to a hotel front desk, or any other ferry terminals or anything else where they can obtain a city information map. And I think you probably, as councillors, are familiar with what I'm talking about. And as you will see, the red circle on the right says that there is nothing there to indicate that we exist. There's supposed to be 9 of us market vendors in that little Nathan Green area. When I lived here 7 years ago, Nathan Green was the spot. It was bustling, it was busy. That's where everybody wanted to be. Now, since I moved back, which I had no idea of all the changes until this year, that the other side, the new side, Sackville Landing side, is where everything is happening. As you can see by the symbols, they've got craft stuff indicated. They've got food, jewelry, everything. But over at Nathan's Green, where it's circled, we get a Wi-Fi signal. So nobody even knows we're there. There's no restaurants behind us. Oh, sorry. When I applied, it showed that the restaurants were open, that it was a bustling area, and that it would be busy. And it's not. And they assigned me this spot that I'm in. They won't let us move. They won't let us come down to where people walk by. I literally go for hours without seeing a single person, not one. Long weekend May, I was there for over 8 hours. The ferry terminals were sorry. Okay, they were packed, and they hold about 200 people. I have video of 5 people off of that 200 people that came in our direction, but they were down below. They couldn't even see me. I literally shouted at people, "Do you have a dog? Please come and see me." It's embarrassing. There's no opportunity there to make extra money for me to live on. This money I make at these craft shows buys my food, my dog's food, which is a service dog, and pays for my prescriptions, my foot care nurse, and everything else. And they held this out as being a beautiful spot to have a vending spot where we could make some money. And I'm not the only one, but I am the only one coming forward because I have a bit more guts.
Okay. Thank you,
So,
Debbie.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. I will see if any councillors have any questions. Councillor Kent.
Debbie. Thank you for coming in. And it's okay for you to be passionate and emotional. You're safe here. I certainly am concerned about what you're talking about. Who produces the map?
Sure, I tried to find out through the licensing committee, or like the licensing department, who I got my vendor license from, and they've been really hard to deal with. They offered me a refund if I quit before I came to see you guys, and I said no because I wanted my chance to speak to you. They said that there's nothing they can do to help us move, to help us advertise, to do anything. And this map is our only advertisement that there's anything on the boardwalk at all, and that's what everybody refers to. And I just don't think it's fair that the 9 of us at Nathan's Green paid exactly the same amount as the people at Sackville Landing. Is exactly the same price, but it's not the same area. It really isn't. And then all these squatter or, scalping vendors that are on the other side, like I'm going down there this afternoon, and I think 311 is getting sick of me calling about it. When I first started there on my the first day I saw him, but on the second day, I managed to get a panhandler who was violent, who was smoking bongs openly in front of our tourists, who is not a good example for Halifax to have, right at the ferry terminal. He was throwing things at the security guards who were brand new. It was their second day. And I got the documentation, and I phoned the police, and I got him trespassed for 6 months. So if I'm just a little public person being able to do that, why can't the city licensing department get those scalper vendors out of there, because they affect everybody that's over there. They affect all the regular shops. They affect all those other 9 people in Sackville Landing, and they affect anybody who wants to sell anything, because they're taking money from the people who have paid for their licenses and people who are legitimately supposed to be there.
Another question. What is the name of your?
Mine's called My Paw Pal.
My Paw Pal?
Yeah.
And Debbie, what's your last name again?
Lloyd, Lloyd. Yeah.
Right. My Paw Pal. And where did you say you live now?
I live in Bedford.
Bedford. Okay, so again, thank you for coming in. I think there's and maybe before you leave, you can leave your phone number and email. Maybe there's a way that Jean and I can talk about it and see what we can help with this. There's a lot of unknown information for me. Like, I'm not sure who manages the locations. It might be that we have licensing that gives the license. We may not have the capacity to change some of those things. Also, the capacity of policing the area and all of those things. So, being the downtown, but I'm sure Jean has something to offer as well.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Saint-Amand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Debbie, thank you for sharing your story with us. I wish more people would come to us and passionately argue for themselves in the same way. I want to do whatever I can to help you. I'm very much in line with Councillor Kent. We'll need to spend a little bit of time digging into exactly who all the players are and what their respective levels of authority are. I wanted to bring a couple of things to your attention that might be really useful for you, given that you're running this business. There is a maker market taking place during Bedford Days. I'm hoping that you're part of that. Excellent. And there is now, as of the week that we were away at FCM, a Bedford Farmers Market, even though it's not in Bedford. It occurs at the Building Futures on Glendale Drive. Well, I guess, is it on Glendale or Duke? On that end, Glendale. Okay. I will connect you with the person that runs that, because that may be another opportunity for you as well. It runs on Wednesdays, so it's less likely to compete with what you're doing on the weekends when you go down to the waterfront. Councillor Kent and I will certainly look into all the particulars so that we can try to help you address this particular problem. Yeah, please.
Sorry. I mostly want to say that since they knew, the licensing department knew that I was going to be coming forward to you and wrote you that report, I'm sorry it was so long.
Quite all right.
My investigative side came out, that they have been there twice, that I've been there again since within the last week, to make sure that we're in our right spot. I did do that test, as I mentioned in the report, and when I was down where the people do walk, I sold 5 in an hour. And then they came, kicked me out from there, and moved me up to the top. And I sold 1 the whole rest of the day for 4 hours. So it's just a bad spot. It's just a bad spot. Now, I'm hoping that because it might be a free seating for the weekend for the sale races, maybe I'll get some business. But I think that one of the things is the bylaw has to change a little bit. Somebody has to, I don't know how that goes about, but for us to be paying the same amount for a spot that is not even close in comparison, I just don't think that's fair. Yeah. And I'm speaking for myself, but also for the other people, because they've all spent that money and they're not showing up because they sort of think it's a dead area now and they've sucked up that money themselves, but I can't afford to lose that. Yeah. And I'm not going to quit. I'm tenacious. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Kent, go ahead.
Never mind. I'll just ask Debbie on the side. I don't need to hold up the meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Debbie. We will move to our next speaker, and that is Peggy Cameron. And while Peggy's on her way up, I will mention that you have 5 minutes, and our clerk, I know you've been here before, and our clerk will give you a notice of when you have 30 seconds remaining. So when you're ready, please proceed. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm going to speak about a couple of things. First of all, I'll introduce myself. I'm Peggy Cameron. I'm a resident of Halifax. I live in a flat north of the Common. And just to credentialize myself a little bit, because I'm not sure that you are understanding what my expertise is, I've been a researcher in climate for about the past 20 to 25 years. I'm also a renewable energy developer, and I'm a vice president of an energy company, wind energy company, that I developed along with my partner. Today I'm going to talk about a couple of things, and I think it's very relevant to all the matters that I heard discussed earlier, and it was very interesting to hear the different ways that we're talking about developing the city, growing the city, and I think one of the things we all need to be a bit cautious about is just the level of technocratic language that we fall into when we're not looking at things in holistic ways. So in 2020, my COVID project was I hired an engineering firm from Toronto to look at what was the impact of demolitions and construction on climate. And it turns out it was a new area of study, and during that time, I used a case study, Halifax, the Carleton block, where there's now probably 5 towers going in, and there was a loss of about 110 to 114 affordable housing units. And what I was able to determine from my work was 2 things. One is that demolitions are a double whammy on climate, and that if you demolish a building unnecessarily and you replace it, you're using twice as much energy as what you would be doing if you were conserving that building and repurposing it or adding on to it. A second part of that I was able to tease out was the taller the building you build, the more intensive the climate gases are relating to that. And that's just because you're using more energy intensive materials like glass, cement, steel, and aluminum. So then I proposed different ways that Halifax could be looking at augmenting and intensifying housing within the urban core. And I researched what we now know of as missing middle and so on. What I also teased out was the history of demolitions in Halifax and what the impact that has been on not just the fabric of the urban built environment, but on who gets to live here. So going back to the early 60s, as part of an HRM plan, the city decided to do urban renewal in the Cogswell district, and that led to about 2,600 buildings being demolished. And we have no record of how many people were displaced during that. That was also shortly after that we had the demolition at Africville, and then my report traced what was going on in this century. So from 2020 till 2003, to 2020, Halifax issued about 2,600 demolition permits. And again, we don't know the unit count, so we don't know the numbers of people that were displaced. So this all brings me to the disconnect that we're facing when we're looking at what's going on with the Robie Street widening. There's no data to support the widening. There is no transit delay in the area that's most impacted between Kennard and North Street. You're looking at buying and have bought many buildings to demolish, which has an estimated 70 affordable housing units. The best and most economical way to get affordable housing is to retain existing affordable housing. No city in this time should be looking at spending $200 million to unnecessarily widen Robie Street to make it a uniform width. Doing that and calling it bus rapid transit is not a plan. We have no plan for bus rapid transit. If this is a tactic to be able to apply for provincial or federal funding by naming it bus rapid transit, we need to propose what that plan is. We need to bring it to the public. And in the meantime, because it's all future-based, you need to hear the residents throughout HRM who are totally opposed to this expenditure. We're asking you to put a pause on the demolitions, to repopulate the empty buildings, deeply affordable housing, as I've said before, First Nations. This city, you own a 7-unit First Nations building that's entirely newly renovated, that's been sitting empty for a year in a time when over 20% of homeless people in Halifax are First Nations. So I'd ask you to review the technocratic elements, integrate them, and make a decision that really is looking at what our needs are. Our needs are more buses, more staff, affordability, shelters, and as Sam Austin's report asked Council to approve, we need to be looking at reallocating existing road space, introducing transit priority signals, and other tactical measures. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I will see if there are any questions or comments from councillors. Okay. Thank you very much, Peggy. Thank you. Okay. It's now my role to call for any additional speakers from the gallery, but seeing that the gallery is empty, are there any additional speakers? Are there any additional speakers? Are there any additional speakers? Okay. We have no information items brought forward. We don't have, okay, we don't have any motions. We have no in-camera. We have no added items. I will ask the committee if there are any notices of motion. Okay. The date of the next meeting is August 13, 2026, and I'll ask for a motion for adjournment. Thank you, Councillor Saint-Amand. I was looking left. So, our meeting adjourns at 12:12. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair.